bean plant leaves look the same, and you can see them coming out here in these seedlings. When you plant beans, or peas, or corn for that matter, the seeds are big because they're the same seeds that you eat when you eat these foods. This makes the seeds very easy to plant because they're so nice and large. Beans are usually ready to harvest about 8 to 10 days after the flower appears. The beans, of course, are the fruit that grows once the flower is fertilized. Here's a purple variety of pole bean. In addition to the beautiful purple beans, it has lovely purple flowers ready for pollination. Here you can see the beginnings of beans growing after the flowers are pollinated. The way a plant grows is called its habit. Pole beans have a vining habit, so they need to be supplied with something that they can grow up. They'll grab onto anything that's in their path. In this case, a dill plant that just happened to be nearby. Pole beans have tendrils, those little things that grab on, and these tendrils allow it to grab on and climb. Here we have what looks like fava beans, broad beans, growing on a bush bean plant. So bush beans are a type of bean plant that doesn't climb. It only gets about 12 to 18 inches tall. You do have to bend over, or squat, or kneel, or sit on the ground to get down to their level to pick them. Although there are many different cultivars of peas, they're all the same species, and they all look the same when they're growing. Here's a close-up of a just-born baby pea pod with the flowers still on it. All pea flowers have the same lovely formation. If you buy a packet of peas to plant, well, what you're going to plant looks like peas because they are. A good variety of peas to grow for minestrone are shelling peas, which means that you can't eat the pod or shell. However, you can also use snap peas and just cut them into pieces for the soup. Snap peas have been bred so that the pod is edible. Snow peas are a third kind, eaten just for their pods, when the peas inside are very tiny. So the pod is harvested when it's still very small and flat. All peas should be provided with support because they're a vining plant and they want to grow up something. If you don't give them support, they'll just fall all over the ground and won't do very well. Peas do best in cooler weather. Those pretty white blossoms that the bees pollinate don't produce peas as well when the temperature gets above 80 degrees or so. Peas typically are one of the first plants to plant outdoors in the spring. You can plant them as soon as the ground can be worked. Here's a couple of peas that are just ready to pick, so let's pick them. Put your thumb and fingers all the way up to where the pea joins the stem. Then push your fingers against your thumb and the pea pod will snap right off. Enjoy! Yum, 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 yum.
Fresh green beans are naturally low in sodium and often are just as cheap as the canned ones. Green beans also contain a lot of essential vitamins and minerals, like vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin K, as well as some potassium. They also contain fiber. Fiber is a type of carbohydrate that helps to lower our cholesterol levels. Lowering your cholesterol levels can play a key role in our heart health. Minestrone is supposed to be a catch-all kind of dish. Whatever you have in your garden or fridge, as far as vegetables go, is fair game. As long as it has a tomatoey broth with vegetables and some pasta or some rice, you've got the right idea. I'm using carrots, celery, green beans, kidney beans, diced and chopped tomatoes, onion and garlic, some fresh basil, dried basil as well, and some dried oregano, elbow pasta, parmesan, and my broth. I have vegetable broth, but you can use vegetable broth, chicken, beef, and don't forget some salt and pepper. If you have watched our other videos, you've seen us chop an onion before. You slice it in half, peel the onion, cut off one end, half the onion, then slice it into strips, keeping the uncut end intact. Then you can chop what you have. You end up with nice uniform pieces. Don't forget to use the ends of onions for vegetable broth if you want to. The recipe says to dice the carrot, but I tend to like slices for soups, and both work just fine. I also feel safest cutting a carrot this way. I don't typically peel my carrots either, and here's why. Generally speaking, there's some fiber in the exteriors of vegetables, so when you peel them away, you do lose some of that benefit. Next up is our celery. Whatever shapes you like, just try to make them as uniform as possible so that they cook evenly. Celery is easy to chop. If you have multiple celery stalks, you can cut them all at once because it's so easy to slice through. Now we can mince our garlic. I'm using 5 cloves because these cloves are a little small. To start, cut the fresh garlic into thin slices, then use a fan chop technique to mince. You can place your free hand on the top of the blade near the tip of the knife, with your fingertips touching the edge to help secure the knife. The tip should basically stay in the same place as you mince. Rock the knife up and down, left to right, back and forth in a fanning motion until you have minced it all. If you're using canned green beans, make sure to rinse them thoroughly or use a no salt added or low salt alternative if your doctor recommends you watch your sodium intake. You can chop the ends off, but you can also eat the ends, so that is your preference. Next up, heat your oil in a large pot. Make sure that pot is large enough for all your ingredients to simmer in, and you can heat this oil at a medium heat. Once your oil is heated, add your onions to cook. You can add your salt now too to cook with the onions and garlic. Let them cook until translucent, about 5 or 10 minutes. Stir them every so often so they cook evenly. Once your onions are cooked a bit, we can add our garlic. Cook that for about 30 seconds more. Next, add your carrots and celery and cook them until they soften, typically about 5 minutes. Now we can add our green beans and our dried herbs. We're using dried basil and oregano, about a teaspoon of each. I'm not one to perfectly measure everything unless I'm baking, so if you like a stronger herby flavor, then go for more. You can also add more pepper and salt at this time to your desired taste. So I'm adding both crushed and diced tomatoes to make a difference in texture in the soup, but use whatever you have on hand. My broth is frozen, as you can see, but it melts pretty quickly. After you've brought your soup to a boil, you can lower the heat so the soup is simmering. Then you can let everything simmer for about 10 minutes. Go ahead and add your noodles of choice. Then you can add your canned kidney beans. If you're using dry beans, you have to soak those for generally 8 to 10 hours overnight before. I had pre-soaked mine so they're ready to go. Now things are really starting to smell good. You can get it going to a nice low simmer and let everything cook for another 10, 15, 20 minutes. I would taste test the beans or the pasta to see if they're at your desired tenderness. Ladle some into a nice big bowl, and I have my Parmesan and fresh basil all ready to go. There's plenty of leftovers with this dish, and it freezes really well for about 3 months. You could serve it as a whole meal, or maybe just as an appetizer. Yum, a veggie-packed meal that still has a good amount of protein from the beans, pasta, and the cheese.